Our main speaker is Tom from Prescott.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for asking.
All right.
How's everybody doing tonight?
All right.
My name's Tom. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Tom.
How about that Dale? He did a great job, didn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Give him half the time. He come up here and do some more. So I'm happy to be here, always. It's always an honor and a pleasure, to come to speak to alcoholics. I've been doing it for quite a while. My anniversary date is December the 9th, 1983. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor. I have a service commitment because that's the way I came up in Alcoholics Anonymous, was doing service. So I always have a service commitment that I'm doing. But I didn't get here on a winning streak. When I came to Alcoholics Anonymous the first time, I was 21 years old. Now I'm 70 now. I'll be 71 next month. So almost 50 years ago when I first came here. And like I said, I wasn't on a winning streak. I was in trouble. I'd been in trouble ever since I first picked up a drink at 13. I was in trouble before that. Trouble was my middle name. I was always in trouble. I grew up in Springfield, Illinois, and my old man was a house builder, and he used to get guys with money, like doctors and dentists, to build a subdivision. So the subdivisions were built from farms that were on the outskirts of town. And he would get a job and move us into the farmhouse, and we lived on the job. So, everybody else would go home when it was time to go home, but my old man, who was a master carpenter, he built beautiful homes. And my uncle was a bricklayer, and I've been a laborer ever since I could hold a shovel in my hand. Next year, I'll hit 50 years in the Laborers International Union. And they'll give me a gold union card, and I don't have to pay dues anymore. Pretty nice of them after 50 years of paying dues, ain't it? But, before, I always like to tell a joke, so before I get started, one of my favorite jokes I've been telling for years, and, hopefully you haven't heard it before. But there was this drunk, and he was walking along the cliff. And he was really wasted bad, stumbling around, and, eventually he stumbled and fell right over the cliff, and it was a sheer wall, and he kept falling straight down, and there wasn't anything in the one branch sticking out of the cliff, and he reached out and he grabbed hold of that branch, and he was hanging on for dear life. He was looking up, and he didn't see any way of climbing up back to the top of the cliff or any way of climbing back down to the bottom of it. He was just hanging on to it for dear life. And he looked up in the sky and he said, "If there's anybody up there, will you help me?" And a voice came down from above and said, "I'll help you." And he looked back up and he said, "You will?" And the voice said, "Yeah, let go of the branch." He thought for a minute, he looked back up there and he said, "Is there anybody else up there?" And that's pretty much my AA story, from when I first came here 50 years ago. Like I said, I was in a lot of trouble. I used to sit up there, out there where these farms were in the cornfields, and I'm a kid that grew up in the 50s, in the 60s. And, there's couple of us that are old enough probably, but you probably watched old movies at night on television and see them old black and white science fiction movies with all the flying saucers and everything. And I love science fiction and comic books and everything. That was my first really big escape, was comic books and science fiction books, and I loved to read. And I used to lay in my bed at night and look out at the cornfield and imagine that a flying saucer was going to land out there in that cornfield and pick me up and take me where I belonged, because I didn't belong here. I knew from a long time ago, from the time I was a little kid, that there was something wrong with me. I just didn't fit. I didn't fit in. I was what they call a misfit. I was a misfit my whole life. And I didn't know. I learned from Alcoholics Anonymous what that problem was I was restless, irritable, and discontented. I didn't know that when I was a kid. All I knew was I didn't like who I was. I didn't like where I was. I didn't like doing what I was doing. I always wanted to be somebody else and be someplace else and doing something else. And I didn't, I'm Irish Catholic, and I grew up in the Catholic Church, and I grew up in Catholic schools. And I didn't care for the nuns, because on the when I hit the second grade, I had a nun used to grab both my ears and shake my head violently, When I got old enough to be an altar boy, we still said everything in Latin, and if you screwed that up, the Monsignor would take you back in the back, and he had a great big class ring, and he'd bash you on top of the head with it. By the time I got to high school, the Christian brothers were using their fists on me. So I wasn't too crazy about the clergy. I wasn't too crazy right away about what they wanted to teach me. I wasn't interested in what they wanted to teach me. I was only interested in what I wanted to learn. So I was always in trouble because of that. Because I didn't do my homework. I didn't like math. I didn't like grammar. I liked history, because it's a story. And I liked geography, because I like to know about people in the world. And so I love that. And I always got A's in history and geography and F's in English and math, and wouldn't apply myself at it. And then when it came to playing with other kids, I didn't play well with other kids. I had a really bad temper. And so as a result, I didn't do very well at competitive sports, because I didn't like anybody competing with me. And I didn't like anybody making smart remarks to me. If I struck out at bat and you laughed at me, I might throw the bat at you. So I was always in trouble, for fighting all the time. I'd fight like that. And so, I was always in the cloakroom, what they used to call the cloakroom, where they put you, the nun just get tired of you and say, go stand in the cloakroom, shut you up back there. I was in the cloakroom, and this other kid, she sends into the cloakroom. I was in the third grade, and my father, he liked Playboy magazine. So I had cut this little picture. I tore this little picture out of this gal from Playboy, and I had it in my pocket. And this other kid comes in, so I figure he's in trouble too, just like me, right? So I says, hey, look at this, Well, he goes, oh yeah? Grabs it and runs to the nun with it. So what a rat, Yeah, right? And so, it's go see the Mother Superior. He calls the old man. He has to come off the job and come and pick me up. So I figure I'm going to get a beating, because my mother and my father, they would beat the hell out of you. My mother would give you the back of her hand. She liked to just hit you with the back of her hand, back and forth, back and forth. My old man liked to kick you in the ass with his construction boots on. And so, I figured I was going to get a beating. Well, the old man thought it was funny. He laughed his ass off, I thought, well, shit, that's cool, right? So a couple weeks later, I seen a dime on the nun's desk. So I snatched the dime, and she saw me take it. and go down to see Mother Superior. So I go down, you know, she calls the old man. It's the middle of the winter time in Illinois, freezing cold, you know, and wearing gloves with a hammer don't work too good, you know, so his hands were all cracked up from the cold. He took me home and he pulled my trousers down. You know, I had my tighty-whities on, and he beat my ass until the blood was running out of his hand. Blood all over the place. So you can see, this is what's called a mixed message, all right? I ain't going to blame my old man or my mother. My old man and my mother, they done the best that they could. They really were good people. But they done with me and with my brother and sister the same things that were done with them. And my father's father, he used to see sleeping in doorways on Skid Row. He was from Rock Island, Illinois. His father was a periodic drunk. My sister, who's sober 40 years, just celebrated 40 years, I took her to her first meeting, and then I got drunk. That's why she's got a year more than me. And we'd sit with him and we'd say, you know, Dad, alcoholism is a family disease. And he'd say, my father's drinking didn't affect me because Mother wouldn't allow him home if he was drinking. What, you see him sleeping in the doorway on Skid Row? You think that don't affect you? No. But he hated him till the day he died at 91. And he'd never let it go. You know, and I'd sit with him when he got old, and he'd say to me, he'd come see me like, somehow, you know, I'm going to help him to forgive his father being an alcoholic. And I would sit there with him and talk to him about, you know, don't you understand, you know, that if you'd let this go and if you'd forgive your father, it would free you from all that bad feeling? And he would say, he don't deserve to be forgiven. He'd say, how would you feel? My mother's making $12 a week during the Depression to take care of everybody, and you see him sneak in the house in the middle of the night and hide his money in the register in the floor so he don't have to pay for anything? How would you feel about that? I said, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'd feel pretty bad about it. I'd feel pissed off too, you know. But it's not going to help you. The last 7 years of his life, the old man stayed sober, my grandfather. People used to tell me that he would not drink, but he would just get up in the morning and leave the house. And he'd come back at dinner time, eat his dinner, listen to radio, and go to bed. He died when I was a baby in 1953. Nobody ever asked him where he's going. Nobody ever talked to him. They hated him. They didn't want to talk to him. Matter of fact, when my old man after the war came to Springfield, Illinois, and that's where he met my mother never knew my grandfather drinking. She said, I thought he was a nice man, but your father's family disliked him so much when they all drove down from Rock Island to Springfield for the wedding, he had to ride the bus. They wouldn't even let him in the car with them. Yet he lived with them. Alcoholism affects everybody that's in the family. When he died, my old man told me he was up the grave, and the town librarian was there, and he said, I didn't know you knew my father. She said, yeah, I knew him well the past 7 years. He read almost every book on the shelf. That's how he was staying sober all day. He didn't have this thing that we have. I can't even fathom the amount of gratitude that I have for Alcoholics Anonymous and what it's done for me. But I had a hard time getting here because I'm hard-headed. I made up my mind a long time ago when I was a kid. Everybody wants you to talk like them and dress like them and act like them and do what they do. And I'm not doing that. I'm going to do what I want to do. Nobody's going to make me do anything. My defiance started at a very early age. And defiance is my outstanding characteristic. And it's that defiance that kept me out there on those streets for so long. I started at 13 years old, you know. But I want to say this. What was really first important to me was when I was in the 5th grade for the second time. I moved back into town. And, you know, I just had my brother to play with out there in the woods all the time. And now I'm living on a street in a neighborhood with a bunch of other kids. And I get to be right in with this gang. Little street gang called the Ravens, okay? And I never was good with schoolwork. And I was never good with sports. But you know what I got good at? I got good at being bad. I could be real good at being bad. And I learned how to be bad. And I like being bad. I like being important. I like being a part of something. And I became a part of that gang. And that gang life went on for many years. Many, many years. And by the time I was 13 in high school, we had a little fort that was built out in the woods. And I found a bottle of what we call in Illinois Dago Red, you know. Chianti wine, a big glass bottle with the straw on the bottom, and it was stashed in the bushes somewhere. And it was freezing cold in February, the coldest month in Illinois, about 10 degrees. And I says, oh, some kid must have stole this and stashed it there. So I got it out. I said, I always want to know what it's like to get drunk. So I started sucking the whole bottle down. I can still remember, it had ice chips in the wine. The wine was starting to freeze. And I can still remember the ice chips melting in my throat as I sucked the whole bottle of wine down. And it warmed me up, and I puked all over myself and passed out in the weeds. And that's what you call a drunk-a-log. Okay? Because I never drank any different than that. You see, you might hear people, they'll stand up here at the podium, and God bless them, they have their story and I have my story. We all got our own story. Their stories, a lot of times, are not my stories. My story, different than a lot of them that I've heard, who crossed over a line into alcoholism. I never crossed over any line into alcoholism. I got drunk the first time I ever drank, and I never drank in my life that I didn't get drunk. I would not drink if we couldn't get drunk. If you didn't have enough to get drunk on, what was the use of drinking? There was no use in drinking because I drank to get drunk. I didn't drink, to be sociable. There was no such thing as social drinking to me. And you'll hear them talk about that Alcoholics Anonymous restored them to a life that they once knew. Well, I'm going to tell you, Alcoholics Anonymous has given me a life I never knew. Never. Because it totally changed my life and made me a different person. The person that I was when I finally got sober almost 40 years ago and the person that I am today are two completely different people. That person who came here and finally surrendered and got ready to do what I was suggested to do. Or in my case, the guy told me, in your case, we ain't suggesting, we're telling you. Okay? Never mind the suggestion. We're telling you this is what you better do or you're going to end up dead. And I had some rough sponsors. I'll tell you about them. They were great. But you know what? I'm going to tell you this. The people that used to feel sorry for me and pat me on the back, I can't remember one of them son of a bitches, all right? But those assholes who were on my ass all the time, I remember every one of them. Because they changed my life. Because they didn't give a shit whether I liked them or not. They didn't care. They didn't care if my feelings were hurt. They didn't care if I cussed them out. They cared more about me getting sober than about themselves. I learned that from these people. I met a guy from California. He's in our group now. And I heard him say one day, if you baby them, you bury them. I don't baby nobody. I come here to comfort the disturbed, but I'll disturb the comfortable. Believe me. You know, I got everybody drinking, and we got to stealing because we were thieves anyway already. We were always stealing and vandalizing and getting in little gang fights and stuff. And I says, hey, we got to get some booze. I really like this booze, you know. I didn't give a damn that it made me sicker than hell. What's funny is my mother's father, he got drunk one time when he was 18 years old. It made him sick. He never drank again the rest of his life. He said, that shit's no good. He drank coffee all day, smoked Camel cigarettes, and ate a steak every night and died at 67 with a heart attack. But he ran all the gambling in Springfield, Illinois. That was a long time ago, before the mob got it. Anyway, when I started those guys drinking, we all started drinking. We started stealing liquor, and we were the guys that put the parties on. You know, every weekend, all the jocks, all the girls, everybody all came to our parties because we were the guys that had the booze. And then, you know, something happened. The mid-'60s come along. And, you know, I know you're a lot of young people in here, but you know what the hippies were. You know when all the people started turning on and smoking pot, right? And dropping acid. I'm speaking. We don't answer questions, or this is not a question and answer thing. Thank you. So my buddy says, you know, come on, why don't you get high with us, you know? And I says, no. I says, if you start doing that, you'll become a heroin addict. And they laughed. They said, that's ridiculous. You're not going to become a heroin addict just for smoking some pot. And I says, oh, man, I'm not doing that, you know. This drinking is good enough for me. And so after a while, you know, it got down to me and just one other guy that were drinking. And we were getting ostracized by everybody else because they were hip, slick, and cool. And we were falling down sloppy drunks. And I started feeling that, you know, not a part of thing again. And so I said, okay, I'm ready. And we went all over town. I was 16. I had a card in, and we went all over town trying to find some weed. Couldn't find any. I'm really pissed off because I was ready to do it, you know. And he says, well, I got some mescaline. I said, well, give me the mescaline then. You know, let's do that. Then we found some pot and smoked dope and drank and tripped all night. And that was the start of my outside issues, okay? I ain't real big on that, you know. I mean, let's not bullshit ourselves, okay? We know what we're talking about. You know, I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic. But I've stuck with Alcoholics Anonymous because they're the ones that stuck with me. You see, I started stealing what we used to steal from the store, stealing liquor and off of the beer truck and stuff. Now we started stealing from the drug warehouse. Bottles of 1,000, Tuinols, Secanols, Amatols, Black Beauties, White Crosses, Dexedrines, just to sell on the black part of town and get the money to buy weed and acid with. And then one day my buddy says, you know, my brother just come back from Nam. It was 1968. He was in the Tet Offensive in the Battle of Quezon. And he's got a big habit, man. He's shooting dope all day and drinking beer all day and drinking whiskey all day. And he'd like this stuff. And so we took it to him. And he took that barbiturate, the Tuinol, and dumped it in the spoon. And he stirred it. And he pulled it right up, and he shot it, and I seen how fast he got drunk, how fast he got messed up. And he said, you want to try it? And I said, yeah, that's right, yeah. 17. I started putting a needle in my arm. And I sat around shooting dope with him listening to all the stories about the military life and the drug life and dealing drugs in the military. As soon as I turned 18, I joined the Army. Not because I was a patriot, but because I was a dope fiend. And I wanted to live that life. And they sent me over to Germany, and I found what I was looking for over there and got in the gang. I've always been a good gang member. Always knew how to get in with the other guys. Knew what they didn't have over there, so I took it with me. And that got me right in with them. And I spent the next 2 years, turning all of them into heroin addicts. And then the Army got tired of us. 1973, and the war was coming to an end, and they threw us all out. Threw out all the alkies, all the junkies. And I was locked up for 3 months because I had hepatitis 2. And they let me out of the VA hospital in downtown Miami in the summer, middle of the summer, 1973. My old man had gone to Florida when I was overseas in 72 to work construction and took the family down there. That's why they sent me down there. And I came out the back door. They tried to give me treatment. I didn't want any treatment. I just wanted out. I came out the back door to VA hospital in Miami and duffel bag full of uniforms, and I threw them in the dumpster. I said, I'll never cut my hair or shave again. I took a cab, went to my old man's, and he told me I could go down the street and get a job, and they told me don't drink because you'd mess your liver up with that hep. So I found me some pot to smoke, and I couldn't take it, not hanging out in the bars and them guys talking about the bars all the time at night, and I didn't have no friends, So I started hanging out in the bars with them. Then one night I was out at a dance at the VFW in Plantation, Florida. And the last thing I remember before I went into blackout was me and my buddy, we both had our own bottles of vodka sucking on them. And the next thing I remember is rolling around on the ground outside that dance with him beating the hell out of each other. And when I came out of blackout, I was in a hospital, laying on a gurney. My face was killing me. And I sat up on the gurney, and there was a sink and a mirror there, and I looked at my face in the mirror, and my nose was all split wide open. And my clothes were laying there on the chair, and all I could think was, I got to get these clothes on and get out of here. And I got my clothes on, and I'm in the hallway, trying to find the door. And the nurses grabbed me, and they said, where are you going? I says, I'm leaving. They says, oh, no, you're not leaving. I said, yeah, stop me. What do you mean I'm not leaving? They said, oh, no. State police are out in the lobby. They want you. Want me? Want me for what? Did you ever get that look from people when you say something like that to them? Like, what in the hell's the matter with this guy? You mean you don't know? You don't know for what? No, what? You don't know that you hit a carload of people? And there was a bunch of little kids in that car, they're going to need plastic surgery. I said, I don't even have a car. They said, you were driving your buddy's pickup. Well, where's he? Well, he went through the windshield. He doesn't have any right eyebrow anymore. We sewed that up and sent him home, and you broke the steering wheel with your face. That's what happened to you. I was going to Broward Community College in Fort Lauderdale on a GI Bill because the construction had gone to hell, just to have a couple $100 a month to get high and drunk on. And there was a Korean War veteran that was sitting in the seat next to me. I was taking an air conditioning class, and he saw my face. And he said, what happened? I says, I was drunk. I got in this accident. And he said, listen, you want to have a cup of coffee with me? I'll buy you a cup of coffee. I didn't only had enough change to take the bus home. I said, okay. After class, we went next door to McDonald's. And that man started talking to me about alcoholism. He didn't tell me he was an alcoholic. He didn't tell me that he was a member of this fellowship. I later found that out, and he became my first sponsor. guy named Kenny. But he talked to me about alcoholism. And nobody had ever talked to me about alcoholism before. All anybody had ever talked to me about my whole life is, why don't you change? Why don't you do the right thing? What do you act that way for? Get me water. I could use some water. We got some water. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Thank you. Thank you. I get choked up. You know, why don't you be different? Why do you got to do that? Why can't you drink right like everybody else? I never could drink that way. Are you kidding me? I mean, you know, listen, in my 20s, I used to live with this gal, and she was the president of the Bartenders Union in Peoria, Illinois, where I live. And she only would come out on Saturday night. I would go out every night. And she'd go out to the bar with me on Saturday night, and she liked to drink schnapps on the rocks in a jigger, you know, big shot glass, you know. And the ice would melt in her drink. I never had a drink in my life that the ice melted in my drink. I don't think I've ever had a soft drink that the ice melted in my drink. And you know, the bar's just packed on Saturday night, you know, 3 deep at the bar. And I'm talking to guys and she's talking to gals, and I'm a whiskey and beer drinker. I was telling the guys tonight on the way up here from Prescott, I never had a Tom Collins or a martini or a Manhattan. I never had none of that. Whiskey and beer and wine. Plenty of Mad Dog. Love that Mad Dog, you know. Thunderbird. What's the price? 30 twice. And after a couple hours, I've had maybe 15 shots and 15 beers, and I'd turn and I'd look, and she'd be nursing that third schnapps on the rocks with the melted ice in the glass, and I'd say to her, "Oh, honey, you want another drink?" And she'd say, "No, I'm starting to feel it." And I used to think, what the fuck is wrong with this woman? She's a fucking prude, you know. She don't know how to have a good time. Because you see, I'm starting to feel it. That's not in me. I'm starting to feel it. That's when it's time to get some more. That's not when it's time to slow down. That's when it's time to speed up. So if that's what a social drinker is, sorry. Never been there. Never done that. Not capable of it, okay? Not capable of it. So anyway, I was riding home on the bus and thinking about that man and what he had told me. And I was trying to figure out, you know, because my life's been a mess my whole life. Ever since I was a little kid, I know it's, you know, the only time I felt right was when I got drunk. That's why I fell in love with it. The first time I drank, it took away all those feelings. And I fell in love with that. And I wanted it always, you know, because this mind used to bother me unless I got drunk, unless I put liquor in me and I put drugs in me. That mind would bug the hell out of me. Couldn't stand it. That was a medication. It worked. It worked. And I'm thinking about how my life's always been a mess, you know, why things are so bad. And this little voice inside my head said, I'm asking myself, why? Why? And the little voice says, because you're an alcoholic, like the man said. And I go, yeah. Yeah. And I go home. We had phone books in those days. Pull the phone book out, open it up, very first page, AA, intergroup, right there at the top. Call them up. They say, yeah, there's a meeting right down the street tonight. I went down there. I had a beard down to here and hair down to here, and I watched all these middle-aged squares. I'm hiding in the bushes. I watched all these middle-aged squares going into the back door of a Catholic church, which I wasn't too fond of being at. And I was going to leave. And the greeter saw me lurking around in the bushes, and he came and got me. And he brought me inside, and he started introducing me to all these old squares. Put me down at the table with them, you know, and they wanted to talk to me. And they were being nice to me. And I wasn't used to people being nice to me because I was not nice. I was the kind of guy that if you brought me to the bar where you drank, your bartender would tell you, don't bother coming back here if you're going to bring that son of a bitch, okay? Because I'm 5'7", and you put some drinks in me and I turn into 7'5". And I'm looking for the heavy ashtray on the bar I might have to grab hold of, you know, and pop somebody upside the head with it. So, the thing is, though, I started thinking. You see, I'm a great thinker, and I'm a very clever guy. And I know how to figure shit out, okay? And I think to myself, well, you know, I'm going to have to go in front of this judge. So it'd probably be a good idea if I didn't hang out in the bars. If I just hang out here with these people. Because I know when I get in front of the judge, he'll like that. And I can tell him the story. So that's what I started doing. And there was no Narcotics Anonymous in Fort Lauderdale 50 years ago. There was nothing but Alcoholics Anonymous. And there was no place for a dope fiend to go except to Alcoholics Anonymous. And for the benefit of dope fiends in the room, the people in Alcoholics Anonymous used to say, in AA, we don't drink and we don't take any mind or mood-altering drugs. That was for the dope fiends. And I'd say, well, yeah, I could see that. You know, this alcohol got me in trouble, you know. And, you know, this drinking got me in trouble. I see that, you know. I'm powerless over alcohol, and I got a problem with that alcohol. But if I just don't shoot any dope and I don't drink any alcohol, I don't got no problem. Case closed. I don't know why I need anything else or need to do anything else. And I get out there in my car, you know, and I reach down underneath the seat and I pull my bag of weed out and I start rolling me up a big fat one, toking on it. And I start telling myself, you know what? This drug doesn't alter your mind or your mood. It enhances it. This is a mind and mood enhancing drug. Do you think that I brought that up as a topic of discussion? Or asked anybody else what they thought? You see, I don't tell this story because of a substance. This disease of alcoholism is not about a fucking substance. It's about the thinking. The way the alcoholic thinks. Alcohol didn't make me an alcoholic. Drugs didn't make me a drug addict. Alcohol and drugs is a medication that I use to treat alcoholism with. And all I ever wanted to believe, that all you had to do was just not drink and not shoot dope and you'd be okay. And I spent the next 10 years in the revolving door of Alcoholics Anonymous with that thinking. And that judge, when I got in front of him, and he asked me the right question. He said, what's your problem? Well, I said, Your Honor, I'm an alcoholic. That's my problem. I mean, I learned that here. This is where I learned to say that. You wanted me to have a seat here. You wanted me to say, my name's Tom, I'm an alcoholic. Well, Your Honor, my name's Tom, I'm an alcoholic. That's my problem, but I'm going to those meetings. And I'm doing the right thing. And I promise you, if you give me a break, you'll never see me in front of you again. And that judge did the worst thing he could have done for me. He gave me that break. You see, I'm not the kind of guy that you can give a break to. You give a guy like me a break, I just learned my shit worked on you. Because that's what I do. I'm a user and an abuser of drugs and alcohol and people, places, and things to get my way. Because that's all I've been interested in my whole life, was getting my way. I want what I want when I want it, and I want it my way, and I want it right now. This is the way this alcoholic mind thinks. See, I have a disease that centers in my mind. It's a thinking disease. And it's a talking disease. And it talks to me. And what it tells me is, you know how to run your life. And you know how to run everybody else's life. And you know the way life ought to run. And if everything would just run your way, you'd be fine. There'd be no problem. You see, my story's written in the big book. I'm that guy who thinks that I can wrest satisfaction and happiness from this life if I just manage well. But alcoholism, if it doesn't kill you, it has a little trick for you called progression. And as the years went by, the time that I could spend out there got shorter because I went to the bottom faster. The time that I could spend in here, every time I hit a jackpot, get thrown in jail again, run to AA, I run here to get my shit back. Get a license back, get a car back, get a job back, get a girlfriend back, get a place to live back, get everything back, get everything fixed. I don't need you no more. I'm good now. But the periods of time got shorter out there. I went to the bottom faster because of progression. And the periods of time that I could spend in these rooms full of shit got shorter too. Because you can't sit around in here and be so full of shit. Say you're sober. You know you ain't doing the deal. You ain't doing the way that everybody else does. You know, a guy says to me one time, he said, you know what your problem is, Tom? Because people in Alcoholics Anonymous love to tell you what your problem is. Because they got the same problem you do. I said, yeah, what's my problem? He says, your problem is you think you're unique. I says, well, I don't see as that's a problem. What do you mean? He says, yeah, but the uniqueness you got's terminal. You got terminal fucking uniqueness, okay? You think you're different than all the rest of us. You think you don't have to do what we have to do to stay sober. You think you can do this thing your way. Well, how's your way been working, wise guy? That's what they said. After 10 years of doing this, I got down where I couldn't put days together anymore. I'd come into rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and my great idea for controlling blackouts was just keep shooting cocaine. If you had enough cocaine to shoot, maybe you could just keep drinking and not go in a blackout. And I'd come in, and I'd say to the people in AA, I'm done. And I believed it when I said it. I wasn't lying. I lived in delusion, in insanity. I'd say I was done, and I'd get up from the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, walk down that street, and hear some music coming from a jukebox and a joint and say, I'm just going in there to listen to music. Drink a Coke, sit down at the bar and start staring at myself in the mirror. And then all of a sudden, I'd look at that clock up there on the wall and I'd say, God damn it, I bet you if I keep my eye on that clock, I don't care if a beautiful woman comes and sits down next to me, I ain't going to talk to her. I ain't going to talk to nobody. I'm just going to stare at that clock, and I'm going to make myself drink for an hour, and I'm going to get up from this bar stool, and it's going to be different. You know how fucking nuts that is? How many years I've been telling myself that shit? It's going to be different. And come out of a blackout in the weeds. That's insane. I was in a jail cell, and I'll finish up. I know you guys are about ready to get out of here. I was in a jail cell. I come out of blackout, and I was walking down the street, Federal Highway in Boynton Beach. It's right alongside the Intercoastal Waterway and the Barrier Islands on the other side. And they were building this building, that bunch of heavy metal clamps out there, and I took one and I heaved it right through the big picture window. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, a guy come running out of the breakfast joint, and he run up to me and he says, I'm a cop on the other side of, over there in Briny Breeze. I'm going to call the Boynton PD. You're going to jail. I said, you better get out of here. I'll hit you with one of these son of bitches. He run back inside. I turned and looked at the seawall, and I said, fuck them. I'll swim out of their jurisdiction. I made it as far as the seawall, and they were on me, 3 of them. Put the cuffs on me, arrested me for attempted burglary. I was really pissed. I never even stepped off the sidewalk. I wasn't trying to burglarize the place, just smash the window. And I was terrible to tear shit up when I was drunk. And I'm sitting in that jail cell, sobered up, and I'm thinking, why can't I straighten my life out? Why does this shit keep going on in my life? Why can't I fix this? And a little voice come back in my head said, because you're crazy. And the reason you're crazy is because you think you can run your life, but you can't, but you think you can, and that's why you're insane. And I said, yeah, that's the truth about me. Not only am I powerless over this, alcohol and drugs, if I start putting it in me, I'm not going to stop. But my thinking doesn't work. My life's not unmanageable because I got drunk and thrown in jail. My life's unmanageable because my thinking doesn't work. If all I ever needed to do was not drink, how come I always drank again? Because I had no program, I had no way of life. I only had me. Me and my terminal uniqueness. December the 9th, I'll be sober 40 years. My life's still unmanageable because I still have alcoholism. Yesterday's booze ain't getting me drunk today, and yesterday's sobriety ain't keeping me sober today. I hope you never have too many years and not enough fucking days, okay? Because it's all about the day we're in. My life is managed today by my God through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, day at a time. Thanks for letting me share.